Good evening. Welcome to the September 12th, 2023 meeting of the USD 305 Board of Education. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. The first item we have this evening is approval of the agenda that's been published. Is there a motion regarding the agenda?
Move we approve the agenda as presented.
Dr. Bandry moves to approve.
Second.
Mr. Grant, second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to the second item this evening, which is approval of the 2023-2024 local option budget. This is the annual resolution to adopt the LOB percentage used in the budget. The resolution states that we will be authorized to use 33%. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the 2023-2024 local option budget resolution as presented.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. Dr. Bandre. Can we go into the hearing now? Okay, so we approve that. We have a motion, a second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries 7-0. And now we go into the revenue neutral hearing. At the last board meeting, we held a budget work session to review the budget document, the mill levies, and estimated published budget. Tonight, we have two final steps to wrap up the 2023-2024 formal budget process to meet the September 20th deadline. The first is the hearing to exceed the revenue neutral rate. The notice and details were published in the Salina Journal on August 18th, and the county notified taxpayers on August 11th. We will now open the hearing for the purpose of hearing and answering objections of taxpayers relating to the exceeding the revenue neutral rate for the 2023-2024 tax year. It appears we have no one to speak regarding that this evening, so we will move on for a motion regarding.
Move we approve the 2023-2024 exceeding the revenue neutral tax rate resolution as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Ms. Casso seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. We will now go into the 2023-2024 budget hearing. And I do have a motion prepared for that when we get to that point. And finally, the last step of the budgeting process is the budget hearing. As discussed at the budget work session last month, budget decisions focus on our mission and strategic plan goals. We've used the building needs assessments to identify areas.
We need to go back on that revenue neutral rate, exceeding the revenue neutral rate.
Okay.
We have to
Oh,
do
we have
a
to do a
roll call vote.
I'm
So
sorry.
I apologize
Yep.
for not stopping you sooner.
I apologize. We do need to have a roll call vote on that. So we have a motion and a second. We'll just go back to the roll call piece. Ms. Zimmerman.
Aye.
Dr. Bandry.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Schamberger. Mr. Grant.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Ms. Casso and Mr. Gardner.
Aye.
Okay. So motion carries 7-0. Roll call. I apologize for that. Okay, so we'll move back into the budget hearing at this point. Okay, so the final step in the budgeting process is the budget hearing. As discussed at the budget work session last month, budget decisions focus on our mission and strategic plan goals. We've used the building needs assessments to identify areas to target budget dollars, including salary increases and commitment to professional development. The notice and details were published in the Salina Journal on August 18th. In addition, all budget information is available on the district's website. We will now open the budget hearing for the purpose of hearing and answering objections of taxpayers relating to the purpose of used funds and the amount of tax to be levied. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this time? It appears we have no one. We do have a motion prepared. Mr. Grant.
President Fletcher, I move to approve the 2023-2024 budget as published. The budget was developed based on the board's review of the building needs assessment and state assessment results.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Dr. Vandre seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, the next item on our agenda, recognitions and presentations with Ms. Jennifer Kamian.
Good evening. We'll start with You Make a Difference Award. Staff members are nominated by colleagues to receive a You Make a Difference Award for their support of students and the mission of Salina Public Schools. Board of Education members surprise recipients during their workday with lapel pin and a handwritten note. Bridget Crow, kindergarten teacher at Sunset Elementary School. Bridget was nominated by a fellow teacher who shared that Bridget's superpower is seeing a struggling student, taking time to talk with them, and turn their day around. Her colleagues know she is a wonderful source of ideas about classroom management, lesson planning, and how to connect with all students. She makes everyone around her feel included, connected, and part of a team. Thank you, Bridget, for making a difference. And next, we will be recognizing Superintendent's Excellence Awards for students whose competitions took place after last school year ended. Please keep in mind that some of our student athletes will not be here due to fall sports and that some of them graduated in May. Tonight, Danica Dixon, sophomore at Central High School, is our student photographer. She will take pictures of our students for us. We appreciate your work. Thank you, Danica. And our first award this evening goes to Central High boys golf student who qualified for state. Both the coach, Chris Fear, and the student are unable to be here this evening due to prior obligations, but we want to recognize Jack Kane, who graduated in May. He shot a career best in the first round of the meet and finished in the top 30 of all 5A golfers in the state. Congratulations. Our next group of awards goes to the boys golf students from South High School. Jason Hooper is the coach. Will you please join Superintendent Exline at the front? And will the golf students please line up next to Mr. Hooper at this time? Golf student. Mr. Stewart will be stepping in for Mr. Hooper this evening. Thank you. Oh, he's coaching. Very good. Students, as I call your name, please step towards Superintendent Exline so you can receive your award. After you've received your award, please remain standing until all of the students have been recognized. Maddox Zaysongkum Jr. Please remain at the front. Thank you. Jackson Perry, sophomore. Ethan Harris, Jr. Dominique Girard, Jr. Blake Priester, Jr. Jacob Tran, sophomore. Please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you. Our next group of awards goes to the track and field students from Central High School. Mike Kilgore is the coach. Will you please join Superintendent Exline at the front? And will all the Central High track and field students please line up next to them at this time? Again, we have lots of people who have graduated and lots of people who are in other activities as well. So we want to recognize Caden Snyder, sophomore, discus. Elle Denning, senior. Jameer Moore, senior. Mallory Renfro, senior, for the 3,200-meter run. Caitlin Roop, junior. Anna Hoagland, senior, who finished 4th place in pole vault. Allison Robinette, junior. Jack Burt, senior. Angel McMurray, sophomore. Zach Tibbetts, who graduated in May, and Christian Brosey, sophomore. Please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now. Our next group of awards goes to the track and field students from South High School. Cameron Magnell is the coach, but could not be here this evening. Jody Nutter is here in his place. Will you please join Superintendent Exline? And will all the South High track and field students please line up next to them at this time? Tamaya Cheeks, sophomore. Kylie Arnold, graduated in May. Olivia Mancino Hind, graduated in May. Kaylin Connor, sophomore. Alina Arcio, sophomore. Ava Lemaster, junior. Mercedes Tarver, junior. Seth Robin, senior. Honesty McNeil, junior. 8th in discus. Bethany Hicklin, sophomore. 5th in pole vault. Dylan Bryce, junior, 7th in pole vault. Please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now. Our next group of awards goes to girls swimming and diving students from South and Central High School. Dawn Sheffergen is the coach. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And will all the swimming and diving students please line up as well at the front? The team placed 16th out of 40 at the state championships in Topeka. Alexandra Kuykendall graduated in May. Allison Kuykendall graduated in May. Amelia Kuykendall graduated in May. Asby Peckham, senior. Mariah Profit, senior. 200 medley relay and 200 freestyle relay. Caroline Fields, junior, state medalist in diving. Josie Ebel, sophomore, consolation finalist in the 50 freestyle and 100 freestyle. Allison Exline, senior, 11th in 1 meter diving. Please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you. Our next group of awards goes to the Central High Robotics team who competed at the 2023 Greater Kansas City Regional First Robotics Competition. Sheila Allstat is the activity sponsor. Please join Superintendent Exline at the front, and will all the robotics students please line up as well. Elijah Rosano graduated in May, team co-captain. Dion McNeil graduated in May. Keegan Madison, senior. Ethan Mullen, senior. Diego Garcia, senior, co-captain. Shia Helser, senior. Caitlin Martin, junior. Rorik Krebs, sophomore. Marcos Lira, sophomore. Peyton Trusty, sophomore. Please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you. Our next group of awards goes to the softball students from South High School. Patrick Bryan is the coach, and the assistant coaches are Shelby Mann, Paige Parker, and Jacqueline Crow. Would you please join Superintendent Exline at the front? And will all the softball students please line up next to them as well? The team won regionals and proceeded to defeat the number 2 seed in their first game of the state competition. Together, they placed 4th at state. Emily Anderson graduated in May. Lily Bartley graduated in May. Bailey Bryn graduated in May. Addison Copeland graduated in May. Peyton Fritz, sophomore, Malia Koster, senior, AVCTL, second team. Mackenzie Langer, junior. Briley Moss, sophomore. Emily Newman, senior. Ayanna Revels graduated in May. Araceli Rivas graduated in May. Brooklyn Webb graduated in May. Sadie Zesonkum, junior. Macy Yost, junior. Madison Yost graduated in May. Please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now. Are they coaches? This evening, our last group awards goes to the boys tennis students from South High School. Brian Pekarik was the coach, but could not be with us this evening. Athletic Director Ryan Stewart is here in his place. Will you please join Superintendent Exline at the front? And will the students please line up next to him at this time, if they are here? Very good. Okay. And they are both graduates, and they are Andrew Schrag, and he played on a doubles team with Isaac Harper. Congratulations to them.
Okay, thank you. It's always great to be able to honor the students of USD 305. The next item on our agenda is approval of the consent agenda items, to include the minutes of the August 8th, 2023 regular meeting, minutes of the August 22nd, 2023 special meeting, the personnel report, financial reports, which include the August bills list, the July treasurer's report, July investment report, July journal entries, to approve encumbrance listings, to village travel for projected travel expenditures for chartered buses services for the 2023-2024 school year in the amount of $75,000, to Smoky Hill Education Service Center in the amount of $45,300 for the purchase of licenses for Fast Forward and Reading Assistant Plus for CKCIE, to Verti in the amount of $35,504.84 for the UPS renewals at the Operations Center, Central High, and South High, to approve the South High gym floor repair bid to Lankford Enterprises, Inc. in the amount of $35,415, including the insurance payment of $10,415 for a total amount due of $25,000. To approve the Federal Head Start 2023-2024 budget revision to transfer $96,840 from personnel and fringe benefits category to equipment. To approve Federal Head Start and Early Head Start grant application and to use carryover funds from the 2022-2023 and budget revision for 2023-2024 to carry over the 2022-2023 funds from the personnel and fringe benefits category to other operating in the amount of $145,000, and to carry over the 2023-2024 funds from the personnel and fringe benefits category to the other operating in the amount of $51,000. To approve Kansas Stronger Connections competitive grant request in the amount of $200,000 per year for 3 years, totaling $600,000, to approve liquidation of excess school equipment and supplies, to approve the South High softball fundraiser for the sale of dinner tickets from March 6, 2024 to April 7, 2024, and to approve the South High Drama Department fundraiser for a social media and letter campaign from November 1st, 2023 to December 1st of 2023. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda? Ms. Zimmerman?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
A motion, Dr. Bandre seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Now move to our public forum, and we don't have anyone who has requested to speak at public forum this evening, so we'll go into our action agenda with Ms. Hilt regarding the Central High International Thespian fundraiser and out-of-state field trip.
Hello, good evening. Last year, we went to the International Thespian Festival, and we had to put in our request for it in the spring semester. So this year, I thought that I would preempt that I probably will have some students who qualify for the International Thespian Festival again. And so I'm seeking approval for that out-of-state field trip with whoever potentially qualifies at our state festival, which won't be until January. But better to have approval at the beginning of the school year when they go and compete rather than to seek it later.
Now, last year was in Arizona.
No,
Re-
Bloomington, Indiana. It's in
Indiana.
Bloomington every year.
Okay, gotcha. And how many last year?
It took 11 students plus one from South who qualified, who traveled with us as well.
I had a question.
Yes.
I guess this is all an estimate, so, but I had noticed that the cost per student times the number of students doesn't add up to the total cost. So it's $999 times 11, and it doesn't exactly add up to 13,000. So I just wondered how you came up with 13,000.
Well, it is an estimate, but we also have to pay for our chaperones to attend as well. So if we, and I don't know how many students will qualify, but I know that last year we had to pay for one chaperone. I actually am paid for by Kansas Thespians because I'm the chapter director for Kansas Thespians, so I would be in attendance whether our students qualify or not, as is prescribed by the Educational Theater Association that I be in attendance. So we don't have to fundraise my way there, but to have another driver, we did have to have a male chaperone with us and be able to pay for their registration as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Hill? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Mr. Grant?
Mr. President, I move we approve the Central High Thespian fundraiser and out-of-state trip to Bloomington, Indiana on June 22nd, 2024 to June 29th, 2024 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Ms. Schamberger seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank
I remember when we approved last summer's trip, there were 3 young folks sitting in the front row who were absolutely giddy about the whole event. So I hope it goes as well this time around.
Okay, the next item we have on our action agenda is to appoint the 2023 KASB delegate and alternate for the conference this year.
I'd like to move that we nominate Dan as the delegate and Bonnie as the alternate.
Mr. Gardner moves for Diana Casso as the delegate and Ms. Schamberger as the alternate. Is there a second to that motion? Dr. Bandre seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. So we will be looking forward to that delegate assembly coming up as we prepare for that. I know you guys will be preparing as well. The next item we have on our agenda is with Superintendent Exline, and it's the Salina Baseball Enterprises.
Okay, so we have had a couple conversations about Salina Baseball Enterprises and the partnership that we've had with them over the last several years. You'll recall that at our last meeting, they came and they asked for us to consider contributing to the next phase of the project. We agreed at phase 1 to contribute $1 million to the project to renovate Dean Evans. And at the time that we committed that money, we were under the understanding that the city was going to be able to join in on that and that we would be renovating fields that were city-owned fields. What ended up happening is that with the pandemic and some things that happened that caused the city to not be able to be part of that project, we were able to renovate our own field using that $1 million that we had agreed to contribute. So the softball fields at South High School were renovated at that time. The cost of the turf for those softball fields was above what we anticipated paying because we ended up fully turfing both fields rather than just doing the infield on one and the full field on the other. So we were in a little over $1 million with just the turf on those two fields. And because the work was being done on our own campus, we did add several projects that weren't in the original plan. And so just to remind you, in October of 2022, the board approved an additional $1.3 million for the restroom and concessions renovation. Out there at South High, we did not have external restrooms, and our patrons were going in the building to use the restrooms. So for safety reasons and for convenience, we went ahead and while we were doing that renovation, added restroom facilities outside. We also added a place for the officials to change, and we upgraded the concession area. That was all in addition to that initial project. We added LED lighting for another $260,000, $270,000, and we added dugouts. So we did quite a bit more than what we had initially intended to do because it was on our own campus, and we wanted to bring those facilities up to a standard that we could be really proud of on our own campus. We did have some money that came in from Salina Baseball Enterprises to help with those projects, and so we're very thankful for that. We also incurred some architectural fees because of the additional work that we did out there. So overall, our total investment right now is about $2.8 million in baseball and softball. So during the work session last month, our athletic directors, at your request, came and shared several athletic needs, a wish list, if you will, that they noted, and those are noted in your packet under Action Agenda Item C, where I've spoken a little bit to Salina Baseball Enterprises for you. And in addition, at that work session, we talked a little bit about some other capital improvement needs. You have approved the capital improvement plan that is our multi-year plan for capital dollars. So last month, we were asked for an additional $1 million for further renovations at that Berkeley Family Recreation area. And those renovations would be on the Wilbur Field, which is the field that is right next to Dean Evans. And my recommendation at this point is that the board consider giving $200,000 and enter into a long-term lease agreement for that $200,000 so that we have access to and can use long-term any renovated area that they do. So at this point, I'm open for questions if you have anything, but my recommendation is that we would, that the board would consider a $200,000 commitment.
Dr. Bender?
Not necessarily a question, but just a comment. I like your recommendation from the work session, from studying all these things. I think it's important as a school district that we represent all involvements, and I think we've contributed a great deal to the baseball and softball community. We have to the tennis community as well, and the wish list, as you say, there's a lot of other areas that need some attention, and we dollars aren't unlimited, I guess is the way to put it. So I think this is an appropriate way to continue to respect. I mean, the additional dollars will benefit the students and the school district, but going at the $200,000 level, I think is a rational way to do this and still keep some dollars in the coffers, as it were, to be able to help with other projects as they come to the top of the list.
Thank you, Dr. Bender. Anyone else?
I would echo Mark's comments. Thanks to the ADs, Ryan and Greg, who came last month or a couple weeks ago to go over this list. I think I think we want to be a part of the project and support the great work that will happen and our students will benefit from and the community as a whole will benefit from. But looking at the commitments we've already made and resources we've already put into the baseball and softball facilities, both at the city level and at South, I think a commitment to make our commitment there totally even $3 million makes sense to me, and with other capital outlay funds, looking at that list and starting to be able to tackle some of those for the benefit of other student groups, I think is a great use of funds.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Anyone else? Ms. Zimmerman looks like she wants to say something.
Just trying to decide if I need to make the motion, but it looks like Dr. Van
Why
Drake.
don't you go ahead and do that?
I move that USD 305 enter into a long-term lease agreement for the use of the complex and commit $200,000 to the renovation of the field currently named Wilbur Field.
Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman, and Dr. Bandre seconds. Any other conversation, discussion, comments? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We'll now move into our discussion agenda, and the first item we have is with Mr. Greg Varenberg regarding our bond refinancing update.
Good evening, board members. Greg Varenberg with Raymond James and Associates. We serve as underwriter for your bond issue, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. Hopefully this is good news for the board. I wanted to report on the final results of the bond refinancing. And as many of you may recall, this is a longer than usual process to complete a bond refinancing. We first started looking at this in January and February of this year and using a really creative approach to how we refinance some of the outstanding bonds. Traditional refinancing, in the legal documents, we have the right to call or redeem the outstanding bonds and pay them off. But in this situation, the 2019 bonds that we were looking at refinancing were not callable or prepayable until several years. Instead of exercising a legal right to call in those bonds, we instead went to the investors that hold them and asked if they would be willing to sell those bonds at a current market price, which is a discount to their face value. And we had some encouraging conversations with investors during the spring and summer. Started looking, we knew we had some of the bonds that we would be able to acquire through what's called that open market acquisition. And once we knew we had something to work with, we then looked at what would the new refunding bond or the new bonds that we would be selling, what would they look like? And it became pretty clear as we got into the middle of working on that refinancing that timing the sale to occur on or after September 1st would be the most efficient way to sell that refunding bond issue. September 1st is the first date on which the new bonds can be tax exempt instead of taxable bonds. And so we were able to complete the sale on August 22nd and complete the closing of the refinancing on September 1st. But when you look back at where we started and some of the amounts that we were dealing with, the projected savings, it was a little bit of a bumpy ride, but I would say we got to a good destination in the process. When we met with you in February, we were looking at refinancing up to $56 million of the outstanding 2019 bonds. And we were at the mercy of the existing bondholders, whether they would consent to selling us their bonds or not. So we knew that it was probably unlikely that we were going to get all of those bonds sold or tendered back to us. But even if we could, we were looking at a savings at that point of about $4,796,000. That was an estimate. That was the savings that we were projecting if we could get all of the 50. It was actually a little bit more than what we had targeted. So once we had your approval on August 8th, we then moved to work with those existing bondholders we'd been talking to secure everything to where on the August 22nd, we would confirm the amount of bonds being sold back to the district. We would sell the new refunding bonds, lock in the savings. And the one surprise that we were handed on the morning of that bond sale was that one of the bond investors backed away. And so instead of having $30,480,000 in bonds refinanced, we ended up with about $15,675,000. So that's the bad news, that we started out looking at $56 million. We ended up only being able to refinance $15,675,000. But when you look at the final savings relative to the amount of bonds being refinanced, we end up at a much better present value savings percentage or a higher degree of savings relative to the amount of bonds that we were able to refinance. So the final savings that we were able to lock in on August 22nd was $4,044,000. And again, it was on a smaller principal amount, $15,675,000. One of the biggest factors in being able to capture a savings was being able to buy those bonds in at a discounted price. So the $15.6 million in principal amount, we were able to pay those investors $12.7 million for tendering or handing over those bonds to be refinanced. So we ended up, on that day, part of the savings comes from locking in the new interest rate. We have an interest rate of 3.64%. That's a tax-exempt interest rate. The bonds that we were refinancing were taxable bonds, and there's an IRS rule that would allowed us to, again, on September 1st or any date thereafter, we could refinance those outstanding taxable bonds, which typically have a higher rate, with new lower interest rate tax-exempt bonds. So we had a very short closing period. Usually we'll take 2 to 3 weeks to between the bond sale and the closing date, but we shortened up that closing process, and I would like to thank your bond attorney, Gilmore and Bell, for handling a lot of legal documents and paperwork to complete that closing very quickly. We didn't want to allow any more time for an investor to change their mind, and then we would have a problem on our hand trying to unravel that. But the good news is we set out to save $4.7 million on $56 million. We saved $4 million on $15 million. Still a very good savings. And then, as I've shared with you before, one of the things that I think the board and the administration should be very proud of is the number of times that you've taken advantage of windows of opportunity or low interest rates and captured a savings for the taxpayers. The cumulative savings now on all of the bond refinancings that you've done is now $16,291,185. And I made the comment to you before, and I will say this again, that is a lot of money that stays in the community that doesn't get paid out to bond investors. And I'd also like to thank the administration of the district, and especially Lisa. There's a lot of work that goes into bond refinancings, and don't want to overlook her role in helping accomplish the savings. So everything is completed. The bond issue closing went smoothly, but wanted to be here this evening to share the results with you, since they weren't final when we met with you at your August board meeting, and be happy to answer any questions that you have at this point.
Dr. Bender?
Thanks again for your time coming and presenting these things. You make a complicated topic make a little bit more sense anyhow.
Thank you.
Looking through the remaining life of the loan, would you anticipate that we're kind of there, locked in for the rest of it? Or it's tough to predict the future, but might there be other times where similar juggling could happen? Or what might we expect going forward, would you say?
Well, when you touched on the remaining life of the bonds, one other factor that I had shared with you in August, and I will mention again, is that in addition to the savings, we were able to shorten up the repayment schedule by 2 years. So your bonds are paid off 2 years sooner. You know, as you get, the outstanding bonds have lower and lower interest rates and less time outstanding, it's more difficult to capture a savings. But if you had asked me, in 2021, if I would be back here in 23 in a higher interest rate environment, finding a way to capture a savings, I really didn't think that this opportunity would be possible. And again, you are the first school district in Kansas to use this technique, and to my knowledge, maybe even one of the first in the country to use this approach to capture a savings. So I work in a very creative industry where we look for opportunities, and that's really what happened on this refinancing. So there could be a possibility that we find another opportunity or a technique where we can come back and capture some more savings, but it becomes a little less likely as we get closer to the bonds being paid off.
It's a great answer. Thank you. And I appreciate your work and candor and all these things along the way. And we've heard from you several times over the 4 years I've been on the board, and it's a very useful time. So
Well, thank
I'm glad your approach helped the board and the district be a little bit innovative in these things. And Lisa, thank you for sure for everything you guys have done.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I think the biggest story there is the fact that 2 years for our community, 2 years of that bond payment has been cut down just by monitoring and managing that. It's a great thing for our community.
That and 16 million is nothing to be laughed at either, for sure.
Yeah. Good deal. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate
Thank you
your
very
time
much.
this evening, and appreciate you traveling to be with us. Okay. Next item on our agenda this evening is board policy with Ms. Wright.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to present a new policy to you all, JBCC for enrollment of non-resident students. As you'll recall, last session, the Kansas legislature passed a couple bills that have influenced or necessitated this policy for school districts to now accept non-resident students who wish to enroll here, and the parameters under which we'll do that moving forward. So what you have in your packet tonight it's kind of a long policy. It discusses what a non-resident student means, which simply means they don't have residency within our district, would ordinarily be a resident of a different school district in Kansas. One of the limitations we have on enrolling non-resident students is capacity. So the policy first sets out to explain how the district will determine capacity, what we have available for non-resident students to enroll, the space we have. And that is going to be determined by several factors, one of which is student-teacher ratio, potentially anticipated growth or decline in the district, literally classroom space capacity, that the number of bodies are allowed to be within, and then demand for particular courses or framework. And what will happen is the superintendent is going to develop recommendations based on some of those factors, and will then bring those to you on or before May 1st each year. And as a board, you will determine and set essentially capacity based on those recommendations. Once you've done that, you will publish notice before June 1st each year of what the capacity is for each grade level for each school building. And then between June 1st and June 30th, we'll accept applications for non-resident students for enrollment. There are some procedures in this policy regarding what happens when the applications are below capacity, and we're below capacity in a building, or what happens if we're at max capacity already when the applications come in. If it's below, we will receive those applications and move them under most circumstances into the district. If we are at capacity, then the policy requires that we undertake a lottery for the available spaces. It'll be a prioritized random lottery of the applications. There are a few reasons also in the policy that requires to give priority to certain students who are applying, where they would not have to go through the lottery if we were at capacity. And those are outlined within the policy, but generally students who are siblings of a non-resident student who's already been accepted, students in military families, homeless students or unhoused students, and anyone who works for the district who has a student who they would wish to attend here in the district. I think those are the big provisions. We can't make the decision for enrollment based on what would be an illegal reason, discriminatory reason, that kind of thing. We do not have to provide transportation unless another law requires us to do so, such as federal special education law. They have to follow CASHA requirements for eligibility, just like any other student. And they have to remain in good standing. Once a non-resident student has been admitted to the district, they stay in the district, unless, of course, they're determined to no longer be in good standing. The policy outlines some reasons why a student would automatically not be in good standing, but that determination is ultimately up to the superintendent. Do you have any questions about the policy? I know you've had it in your packet. This policy will govern our procedures for our policy for addressing non-resident students, again, the determination for capacity, what that level will be at setup, will be brought to you as I outlined above. Yep.
I guess this is not necessarily a question that you can answer, but do you know why we have this new law?
I don't know that I could say specifically why. I believe that there is a focus of flexibility for parent choice that the legislature has been pursuing for some time now in different ways. I think that might be part of it.
Maybe it was more, maybe it had a bigger influence in dense urban areas where the schools or districts are very close together and smaller. But, okay, thank you.
Potentially.
I can tell you that our policy and our procedure has been to accept non-resident students. So the spirit of this doesn't change, it just makes it a lot more complicated and a lot more paperwork.
Yes, one question I have looking at it, and maybe I've missed it somewhere. This is a year-by-year application, so if a student applies and they're admitted 2023, 2024, they've got to apply again?
No.
No.
They do not have to apply. Once they apply and have been accepted, then they will stay a student of USD 305 until graduation. And that's unless another factor kicks in, such as the student no longer being in good standing.
Does capacity factor in at that point, or as
They
soon as
would
their
be-
application is selected, they're forever granted an access?
Yes, their numbers would be considered. So each year, the superintendent will review and determine, you will make recommendations on capacity. That will happen every year. So a non-resident student who would already be attending would be included in the numbers of students that she would be factoring into that equation for setting capacity. Does that make sense? It's a lot of words to say something.
So let's say somebody by federal has special education and needs transportation, and they're from Kansas City. Do you have to provide that?
Yes.
What happens if you don't have somebody who will drive to Kansas City? I mean,
We have to provide that.
okay.
So we've had students enroll here that were not resident before, right? Is that what
Yes,
you're
we have
saying?
non-resident students here every single year and have accepted them. The difference is that in the past, when we would accept a student who was a non-resident student, we would look at, for example, they have a kindergartner and a third grader. We would look at our class sizes in all of the buildings, and we would say, we absolutely will take your children. We'd love to have them as USD 305 students. Here are the buildings where we have openings. And that would be based upon enrollment at the beginning of the year, when we really had a firm idea of how many students we had. And so we might say that, you know what, we want to keep our kindergarten classes really small, so we're going to prioritize based upon kindergarten numbers in that situation. But we have always accepted non-resident students, and we've always had a procedure in place that they need to stay in good standing. Rarely do we revoke a non-resident student. Once they're ours, they're ours.
So it's basically the same procedure as what was in the
No.
policy? Oh.
The difference will be that we have to set by grade level, by building, here's how many openings that we have, and the timeline for that is we have to have that on our website by June 1st. As you know, we don't do enrollment, or we haven't in the past, until July. And so it's really difficult for us to be able to say on June 1 that we have 2 openings in third grade at this building, but that's what we will have to do. So we will, once this policy is approved, we'll have to figure out what's the best way for us to handle internal enrollment so that we don't end up with students that live within our district in a classroom that is very, very large, or having to move staff. We try to limit the movement of staff at the beginning of the year. So that's where it's different.
Okay.
Any other questions? So this was just on for the discussion agenda tonight. You will have to provide notice and hold a hearing on the policy before you can approve it. And I think that would take us to our next section.
Next
Is the-
action item, yes.
Is the hearing process part of the law as well? And we
Yes.
approve a lot of policies
Yes.
okay.
The law specifically requires you to hold a hearing on this policy and an opportunity for public comment.
Okay, any other questions regarding the policy at this time for Ms. Wright?
Well, were there very many students that were non-resident? I mean, do you think there'll be a big influx? Mainly, this is a problem with all the paperwork, right? Because, do you think it won't provide like, oh yeah, there was a big influx of non-resident students with these bills, or what do you?
This is a concern across the state with school districts. I honestly don't know how to, I think since we have typically, our policy has been to accept non-resident students, I don't know that it will really influence what's happening in Salina, other than the additional paperwork to make what we've been doing all these years happen.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's just the administrative burden that I think has really changed here for us. But we'll wait and see. You know, we won't know until we actually see what that enrollment looks like.
Any other questions regarding the policy? Okay, I imagine there may be some come up before our hearing, so feel free to reach out with those if they come up so that we can address them. And we'll move to our next item, which is the action agenda 2 item, where we've got to set and make notice for the hearing. Is there a motion regarding that? Mr. Grant?
I move we approve the notice of hearing regarding enrollment of non-resident students policy as presented.
A motion, is there?
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So we have to have this hearing, but we have to have a policy. I mean, why do we have to have a hearing if it's required that we have the policy? Is there something that could happen at the hearing?
I think it's potentially, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I think it's potentially to ensure that the components of the policy that there is, that reflects the community's opportunity to speak to them. So for example, what we have to identify in the policy, what would be considered in good standing, for example, to warrant removal of someone who'd been admitted prior.
Was there a policy before? Do we have a policy in our book about non-resident students?
Their policy JBC, which is currently in your book, we removed, actually, it wouldn't be today. A month ago, policy JBC had provisions in it related to non-resident students, a few of them. When KASB submitted the policy changes to us for review, that JBC was adopted, but we had not yet adopted JBCC. So it left us for a couple weeks without an effective policy specifically addressing non-resident students. So by adopting this today, setting it for hearing, we have a proposed policy to cover that situation for our non-resident students. I think one of the changes before was the prior policy discussed sort of having a bright line of not taking non-resident students after September 1st. I think we had a practice of considering those applications even after September 1st, but the policy sort of set it up so that we didn't have to make those considerations after September 1st if space was difficult or some other challenge was present.
I should have asked this before, but if somebody from somewhere else says, I want to go to your district, or I want my student in your district, and I want them to go to Coronado, can we say, oh, Coronado isn't the best place for you, you're going to this other school? And is that an option, or did they get to pick their school? Because I know that our teachers have never been able to pick the schools that they wanted our local students to go to, but in most situations.
I can tell you with certainty that capacity, the published capacity, will be the bright line for those kinds of decisions. Lynn, do you have any more to add? There are some, this is a brand new policy, so there are some things that have to be established.
Our understanding right now is if the capacity, say the capacity in third grade is 26, and that building has 25, and somebody wants that spot, and we don't fill it with one of the students that lives within our catchment area, that spot is up for grabs, which could leave that building with 26 and another building with 19. So we can't, right now, our understanding is we can't say if the capacity for both buildings is set the same, that we're going to try to balance class sizes because that's best for kids. We want you to go to one of these two buildings that has fewer students. So those are things that we're still trying to understand and get clarification on. But what I've been told is what matters is where I recommend to you that we set the class maxes.
That's also why there are factors within the policy that allow for considerations such as demand for certain courses or buildings, locations, anticipated increased or decreases in enrollment can all be a factor that's part of setting that capacity.
Thank you.
Just for curiosity's sake, let's say we decline to hold this hearing. What's the penalty?
I don't know that I know that there is I don't think there's an expressly stated penalty to my knowledge. I have not seen that in the provisions. My guess is there could be a challenge like any other to an invalid board policy. Whether appropriations are tied to that or not, I'm not sure. Do you have any idea?
I would need to ask some questions about that I honestly don't know.
I don't know that it's the issue we want to fall on the proverbial sword over, but I'm just curious. I mean,
I think a better course of action might be suggesting to our delegates who are going to KASB Delegate Assembly to suggest that maybe some suggestion be made to legislators that if they haven't had a net reduction in administrative burden by the end of their legislative session, that wasn't necessarily helpful to public schools. So it might be helpful.
Have that conversation.
Okay, at this time, we do have a motion and a second on the floor regarding the notice of the hearing. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is the school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. We'll start with you, Ms. Zimmerman.
Thank you. I think I know what to say here. I attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. They were able to finish their baseball and softball season earlier than usual because of all the new turf on the fields, so they had fewer rainouts. I did stop in at Central for the all-elementary visible learning presentation and saw lots of collaboration and a lot of good ideas being shared among all the tables of teachers, and I got some ideas for myself to think about for my own music presentations in the schools. I did attend the Substance Abuse and Healthy Choices event at South Middle. It was interesting information. It was also fun to see this inside of South Middle, where I don't get to go very often, but I do wish more parents had been there. It was mostly professionals, it seemed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bandry?
So I attended a Smoky Hill Education Service Center board meeting, and highlights there were similar to things we've done here, an audit engagement letter and the overall budget presentation. And again, I would say things are overall in good shape at Smoky Hill. They too struggle to hire some teachers and some staff and various things. I think the things they're doing to prepare and that they are doing to help the districts that are all member of Smoky Hill they're really exciting. They're doing a lot of great things and helping with letters training. I know they've mentioned helping us with that to some extent as well. So I think Smoky Hill's doing great things overall. I also got to present the You Make a Difference Award that Ms. Kamian spoke about earlier, and it was at sunset, and the fun thing about it, beyond just meeting Mrs. Crow again, it was really neat to recognize her. When I called Mr. Cheeks to arrange the time, he asked me to come during the marathon. So I got to go out on the playground during the marathon as well, and it was just fun to see the kids engaged, and we literally pulled Mrs. Crow out of a lap in the process, because she was doing that with the kids, and it was a neat event. These are virtually always neat things, but it's just the setting of this one was enjoyable.
Thank you. Ms. Schamberg?
I attended the community panel for the substance abuse at South Middle, went to the KESB legislative luncheon, attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. I went to the Lakewood and South Middle football game, and then I walked at Stewart for the marathon. So Dana, thank you very much, because that was so fun, and the parents were there, and the kids were getting rid of a lot of energy, and it was just a beautiful morning. So thank you, Dana.
Thank you. Mr. Grant?
I attended the KASB legislative session here last week. Also a CKCIE Board of Control meeting in August. Lots of beginning of year staff changes and hiring. I just want to give a shout out to HR and CKCIE and all the district administrative teams. I don't remember the last time the personnel report was at a full 3 pages, but I know you all have been working your butts off over the past month and a half, getting people settled in building positions and all that. So welcome to new hires and those new to our district, and thanks for all of your work.
Ms. Cusso?
I attended the Lakewood Visible Learning. I thought that went well. It's just good to meet our teachers face to face and hear them collaborate. I also attended the South Central football game, and I stopped by and watched tennis on Saturday. And we are having a 20th year celebration for the school marathon, which is just insane. Wednesday, October 4th at Salina Stadium from 5 to 7. So we're inviting everybody who's ever run or worked it or volunteered or anything to come join us to celebrate 20 years.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Gardner?
I wasn't able to make it to the Heartland meeting this month due to illness, but I was able to get in and catch the football games. It was sad to see the quarterback go down, but those things happen. And I think I'm getting older because the kids going up and down the stairs and just jumping around almost started to get on my nerves. So my patience must be getting short. But I think it was really good to watch the kids out there supporting each other and the energy that they've got. And I just wish they were able to do it just a little bit better, but to get the attendance back up. But I think they'll get there eventually, but it was good to see.
Deal. Thank you. I attended the chamber meeting, also the KSB legislative luncheon, CKCA board meeting. It seems like had several Salina Education Foundation meetings, and I can't remember if we've recognized it at this meeting or not, but Miss Kate Lindsay is the new director of Salina Education Foundation. I think she'll do a great job and continue to grow that partnership with the district. So we'll go now to Superintendent Exline for
Okay, a couple things to share. We hosted a representative from the Department of Homeland Security. You know, we're always looking for ways to make our schools safer for students and for staff. And so we toured 4 buildings and got some feedback from him on things that we should consider. And then our administrators met and looked at what the needs were that he had identified as possible places for improvement. He did review our crisis plans and was very impressed with the level of detail in our crisis plans, and so that was very affirming. But we always have room to grow, and so we were excited for that feedback. We also had the opportunity to go out and award the Horizon Award teachers. And the Horizon Award is for teachers who exemplified real excellence in their first year of teaching. And so we went to Sunset and honored Camden Schreiber, and we went to Central and honored Josh Rubino. And what is really neat is both of those teachers are graduates of USD 305. And so we do good work here. We have some of our very best teachers coming out of our own school programs, and they represent just everything that's good in education here in Salina. I also want you to know that we do have the community survey that we do each year that will be starting on Friday, I think. Is that right, Jennifer? Okay. And that is just, we have a public opinion research firm that does that for us. And it's really designed to get perceptions of our community, of the quality of our schools, what we offer programming-wise, places where we can maybe grow, where we can communicate more effectively. And so I really want to encourage you to talk about this and make sure that people that receive a call give input, because we are always looking for feedback about how we can better meet our community's needs and our students' needs. And so that will start on Friday.
Can I say something else?
Very good, yes. And Ms.
I
Kelsey.
forgot to say I went to the Equity Council, and I want to give Shanna a shout out. I'll be super honest, just like full disclosure. When I first got on that committee, I was like, what is happening? Where's the direction going with this? And what you've done since I've been on it is really outstanding. I feel like we're making headway. I feel like everybody's kind of collaborating, and our focus is so much better. So thank you.
Very good, thank you. The next item we have on our agenda this evening is executive session. We do have 2 of those for personnel. How long do we think we need for our first one? I'm seeing.
Let's do 15 minutes for the first one.
15 minutes. So, yeah, would entertain a motion. Ms. Zimmerman.
I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:45. Is that a good time to start? For 15 minutes for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations. Because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed. And that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 7 o'clock in the SEC room.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second? Ms. Schamberg seconds. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. We'll be going into executive session. Okay, we are back from executive session, and we have no action regarding that session, but we do need a separate executive session.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Education go into an executive session at 7:05 for 10 minutes for the purpose of discussing the evaluation of non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 7:15 in the SEC room.
Motion, is there a second? Second. Ms. Zimmerman seconds. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 4-0. We'll be going back into executive session. Okay, we are back and we are going to need to extend a little bit. Dr. Bender?
Mr. President, I move the Board of Education go into continued executive session at 7:18 for 10 minutes for the purpose of discussing the evaluation of non-elected personnel and their contractual obligations. Because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and the Board of Education reconvene into open session at, 7:28 in the SEC room.
Motion, Ms. Zimmerman seconds. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, we are back from executive session. We have no action, so
We adjourn.
we have a motion to adjourn.
I second.
And a second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Those opposed can stick around. Thank you.